Hey guys, welcome back. I'm here to read a couple more chapters of Holes. Actually, we'll probably stop in the middle of a chapter today because chapter 7 is pretty long, and I'll just pick up where we left off tomorrow. But we're starting at the beginning of chapter 6. When we left off at the end of chapter 5, Stanley had just met the boys and he was learning about their nicknames. And he was thinking maybe the term barf bag was a term of respect. So, chapter 6, Stanley took a shower, if you could call it that, ate dinner, if you could call it that, and went to bed, if you could call his smelly, scratchy cot a bed. Because of the scratchy water, each camper was only allowed a 4-minute shower. It took Stanley nearly that long to get used to the cold water. There was no knob for hot water. He kept on stepping into and then jumping back from the spray until the water shut off automatically. He never even managed to use his bar of soap, which was just as well because he wouldn't have had time to rinse off the suds. Dinner was some kind of a stewed meat and vegetables. The meat was brown and the vegetables had once been green. Everything tasted pretty much the same. He ate it all, and he used a slice of white bread to mop up the juice. Stanley had never been one to leave food on his plate, no matter how it tasted. "What'd you do?" one of the campers asked him. At first, Stanley didn't know what he meant. "Well, they sent you here for a reason." "Oh," he realized, "I stole a pair of sneakers." The other boys all thought that was funny. Stanley wasn't sure why. Maybe their crimes were a lot worse than stealing shoes. "From a store, or were they on someone's feet?" asked Squid. Neither," Stanley answered. "They belonged to Clyde Livingston." Nobody believed him. "Sweet feet?" said X-Ray. "Yeah, right." "No way," said Squid. Now, as Stanley lay on his cot, he thought that it was kind of funny in a way. Nobody had believed him when he said he was innocent, and now, when he said he stole them, nobody believed him either. Clyde Sweet Feet Livingston was a famous baseball player. He had led the American League in stolen bases over the last 3 years. He was also the only player in history to ever hit 4 triples in one game. Stanley had a poster of him hanging on the wall of his bedroom. He used to have the poster anyway. He didn't know where it was now. It had been taken by the police and was used as evidence of his guilt in the courtroom. Clyde Livingston had also come to court. In spite of everything, when Stanley found out that Sweet Feet was going to be there, he was actually excited about the prospect of meeting his hero. Clyde Livingston testified that they were his sneakers and that he had donated them to help raise money for the homeless shelter. He said that he couldn't imagine what kind of a horrible person would steal from homeless children. That was the worst part for Stanley. His hero thought that he was a no-good, dirty, rotten thief. As Stanley tried to turn over on his cot, he was afraid it was going to collapse under all of his weight. He barely fit in it. When he finally managed to roll over on his stomach, the smell was so bad that he had to turn over again and try sleeping on his back. The cot smelled like sour milk. Though it was night, the air was still very warm. Armpit was snoring 2 cots away. Back at school, a bully named Derek Dunn used to torment Stanley. The teachers never took Stanley's complaints seriously because Derek was so much smaller than Stanley. Some teachers even seemed to find it amusing that a little kid like Derek could pick on someone as big as Stanley. On the day that Stanley was arrested, Derek had taken Stanley's notebook, and after a long game of come and get it, he had finally dropped it in the toilet in the boys' restroom. By the time Stanley retrieved it, he had missed his bus and he had to walk home. It was while he was walking home, carrying his wet notebook with the prospect of having to copy the ruined pages, that the sneakers fell from the sky. "I was just walking home and the sneakers fell from the sky," he had told the judge. "One of them hit me on the head. It had hurt, too." They hadn't exactly fallen from the sky. He had just walked out from under a freeway overpass when the shoe hit him on the head. Stanley took it as some kind of a sign. His father had been trying to figure out a way to recycle old sneakers, and suddenly a pair of sneakers fell on top of him, seemingly out of nowhere, like a gift from God. Naturally, he had no way of knowing that they belonged to Clyde Livingston. In fact, the shoes were anything but sweet. Whoever had worn them had had a bad case of foot odor. Stanley couldn't help but think that there was something special about the shoes, that they would somehow provide the key to his father's invention. It was too much of a coincidence to be a mere accident. Stanley had felt like he was holding destiny's shoes. He ran. Thinking back now, he wasn't sure why he ran. Maybe he was in a hurry to bring the shoes to his father, or maybe he was trying to run away from his miserable and humiliating day at school. A patrol car pulled up alongside him, and a policeman asked him why he was running. And then he took the shoes and made a call on his radio, and shortly thereafter, Stanley was arrested. It turned out that the sneakers had been stolen from a display at the homeless shelter. That evening, rich people were going to come to the shelter and pay $100 to eat the food that the poor people ate every day for free. Clyde Livingston, who had once lived at the shelter when he was younger, was going to speak and sign autographs. His shoes would be auctioned, and it was expected that they would sell for over $5,000. All of the money would go to help the homeless. Because of the baseball schedule, Stanley's trial was delayed several months. His parents couldn't afford a lawyer. "You don't need a lawyer," his mother had said. "Just tell the truth." Stanley told the truth, but perhaps it would have been better if he had lied a little. He could have said he found the shoes in the street. No one believed that they fell from the sky. It wasn't destiny, he realized. It was his no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather. The judge called Stanley's crime despicable. The shoes were valued at over $5,000. It was money that would provide food and shelter for the homeless, and you stole that from them just so that you could have a souvenir. The judge said that there was an opening at Camp Green Lake, and he had suggested that the discipline of the camp might improve Stanley's character. It was either that or jail. Stanley's parents asked if they could have some time to find out more about Camp Green Lake, but the judge advised them to make a quick decision. Vacancies don't last long at Camp Green Lake. That's the end of chapter 6. We're going to read a couple pages of chapter 7 and then stop there. The shovel felt heavy in Stanley's soft, fleshy hands. He tried to jam it into the earth, but the blade banged against the ground and bounced off without making a dent. The vibrations ran up the shaft of the shovel and into Stanley's wrists, making his bones rattle. It was still dark. The only light came from the moon and the stars, more stars than Stanley had ever seen before. It seemed that he had only just gotten to sleep when Mr. Pendanski came in and woke everyone up. Using all his might, he brought the shovel back down onto the dry lake bed. The force stung his hands but made no impression on the earth. He wondered if he had a defective shovel. He glanced at Zero, about 15 feet away, who scooped out a shovelful of dirt and then dumped it on a pile that was already almost a foot tall. For breakfast, they had been served some kind of a lukewarm cereal. The best part was the orange juice. They each got a pint carton. The cereal actually didn't taste too bad, but it had smelled like his cot. Then they filled their canteens, got their shovels, and they were marched out across the lake. Each group was assigned a different area. The shovels were kept in a shed near the showers. They all looked the same to Stanley, although X-Ray had his own special shovel, which no one else was allowed to use. X-Ray claimed that it was shorter than the others, but if it was only by a fraction of an inch. The shovels were 5 feet long, from the tip of the steel blade to the end of the wooden shaft. Stanley's hole would have to be as deep as his shovel, and he'd have to be able to lay the shovel flat across the bottom in any direction. That was why X-Ray wanted the shortest shovel. The lake was so full of holes and mounds that it reminded Stanley of pictures that he had seen of the moon. "If you find anything interesting or unusual," Mr. Pendanski had told him, "you should report it either to me or Mr. Sir when we come around with the water truck. If the warden likes what you found, you'll get the rest of the day off." "What are we supposed to be looking for?" Stanley asked him. "You're not looking for anything. You're digging to build character. It's just if you find anything, the warden would like to know about it." He glanced helplessly at his shovel. It wasn't defective. He was defective. He noticed a thin crack in the ground, and he placed the point of the shovel on top of it, and then he jumped on the back of the blade with both feet. The shovel sank down a few inches into the packed earth. He smiled. For once in his life, it paid to be overweight. He leaned on the shaft and he pried up his first shovelful of dirt, and then he dumped it off to the side. Only 10 million more to go, he thought, and then he placed the shovel back in the crack and he jumped on it again. He unearthed several shovelfuls of dirt in this manner before it occurred to him that he was dumping his dirt within the perimeter of his hole. He laid his shovel flat on the ground and he marked where the edges of his hole would be. 5 feet was awfully wide. He moved the dirt that he had already dug up out past his mark. He took a drink from his canteen. 5 feet would be awfully deep, too. The digging got easier after a while. The ground was the hardest at the surface, where the sun had baked a crust about 8 inches deep. Beneath that, the earth was looser, but by the time Stanley broke past the crust, a blister had already formed in the middle of his right thumb, and it hurt to hold the shovel. Stanley's great-great-grandfather was named Elya Yelnats. He was born in Latvia. When he was 15 years old, he fell in love with Myra Menke. He didn't know he was Stanley's great-great-grandfather. Myra Menke was 14. She would turn 15 in 2 months, at which time her father had decided that she should be married. Elya went to her father to ask for her hand, but so did Igor Barkov, the pig farmer. Igor was 57 years old. He had a red nose and fat, puffy cheeks. "I will trade you my fattest pig for your daughter," Igor offered. "And what have you got?" Myra's father had asked Elya. "A heart full of love," said Elya. "I'd rather have a fat pig," said Myra's father. Desperate, Elya went to see Madame Zeroni, an old Egyptian woman who lived on the edge of town. He had become friends with her, though she was quite a bit older than him. She was even older than Igor Barkov. The other boys of the village liked to mud wrestle. Elya preferred visiting Madame Zeroni and listening to her many stories. Madame Zeroni had dark skin and a very wide mouth, and when she looked at you, her eyes seemed to expand, and you felt like she was looking right through you. "Elya, what's wrong?" she had asked, before he even told her that he was upset. She was sitting in a homemade wheelchair. She had no left foot. Her legs stopped right at the ankle. "I'm in love with Myra Menke," Elya confessed, "but Igor Barkov has offered to trade his fattest pig for her, and I can't compete with that." "Good," said Madame Zeroni. "You're too young to get married. You've got your whole life ahead of you." "But I love Myra." "Myra's head is as empty as a flower pot." "But she's beautiful." "So is a flower pot." "Can she push a plow?" "Can she milk a goat?" "No, she is too delicate." "Can she have an intelligent conversation?" "No, she is silly and foolish." "Will she take care of you when you are sick?" "No, she is spoiled, and she will only want you to take care of her." "So she is beautiful. So what?" Phew! Madame Zeroni spat on the dirt. She told Elya that he should go to America, like my son. "That's where your future lies, not with Myra Menke." But Elya would not hear, or would hear none of that. He was 15, and all he could see was Myra's shallow beauty. Madame Zeroni hated to see Elya so forlorn. Against her better judgment, she agreed to help him. "It just so happens that my sow gave birth to a litter of piglets yesterday," she said. "There is one little runt whom she won't suckle. You may have him. He would die anyway." Madame Zeroni led Elya around the back of her house where she kept her pigs. Elya took the tiny piglet, but he didn't see what good it would do him. It wasn't much bigger than a rat. "He'll grow," Madame Zeroni assured him. "Do you see that mountain on the edge of the forest?" "Yes," said Elya. "On the top of that mountain there's a stream where the water runs uphill. You must carry the piglet every day to the top of that mountain and let it drink from the stream. As it drinks, you are to sing to him." She taught Elya a special song to sing to the pig. "On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, you should carry the pig up the mountain for the last time, and then take it directly to Myra's father. It will be fatter than any of Igor's pigs." "If it is that big and fat," asked Elya, "how will I be able to carry it up the mountain?" "The piglet is not too heavy for you now, is it?" asked Madame Zeroni. "Of course not," said Elya. "Do you think it will be too heavy for you tomorrow?" "No." "Well, every day you will carry the pig up the mountain. It will get bigger, but you will get stronger." After you give the pig to Myra's father, I want you to do one more thing for me. Anything, said Elia. I want you to carry me up the mountain. I want to drink from the stream, and I want you to sing that song to me. Elia promised that he would. Madame Zeroni warned that if he failed to do this, he and his descendants would all be doomed for eternity. At the time, Elia thought nothing of the curse, which was just a 15-year-old kid, and eternity didn't seem longer than a week from Tuesday. Besides, he liked Madame Zeroni, and he would be glad to carry her up the mountain. He would have done it right then and there, but he wasn't strong enough yet. All right, we're going to stop there for today, guys. We're on page 31 if anyone is following along, about midway through chapter 7. Have a good night.